It isn't very often that I have a whole page of A4 of notes that I want to cover when I'm talking about a game to review. Normally I get away with a couple of key words, but there's so much going on with Soda Story Brewing Tycoon, and I want to make this review as rounded and informative as possible, that we're going to be diving into quite a bit of detail. So hold on to your hats. This one's going to be a tricky one to navigate, but it's because it's a good game and I want this review to give it justice and make sure that you choose the Tycoon game that's right for you. The first thing I want to say is that this game reminds me heavily of the late 90s game Constructor. Recently had a remaster, or a reimagining I guess, on modern consoles, but what I'm taking from this is that it's not just you building your own business, you're actively in competition with 4 other prisoners because you're all in a prisoner reality TV show, building your own business to compete for getting months knocked off your sentence. So what this means is that you can actively go and sabotage other people's businesses, but they'll be doing the same to you. So whilst you're building up your business, you need to make sure that you invest in your security to keep other people out, or get notified whenever someone's broken in or sabotaged some of your equipment or stolen some of your resources, for example. This is really a cool slant that I don't see happening very often really actively in Tycoon style games, and it's great to see Soda Story bring this back. The actual game itself is broken into 3 very distinct sections. So you have the gardening element of the game, the brewing element of the game, and the delivery, packing and dispatch element of the game. And I'll kind of dip into each one in turn and then show how it all kind of connects together. So at the very beginning of the game, you'll start off with a couple of essences of flavour to brew your sodas. And what you'll be doing is building garden lots or garden plots and then putting the essences into the ground and watching them grow. In order for them to grow, they need to have their plots watered. And water is essentially your version of electricity or power throughout this game. So you'll have a generator and you'll need to constantly upgrade it so that it can keep up with the amount of water pumping supply that you require as your garden gets bigger and bigger, and everything else runs off of water to make the soda possible. After a time, that essence will flourish into a flavour cube. And then you will harvest that cube, it will then go into your backpack, and then you'll wander around and pop it into a brewing machine. Now there are several types of brewing machines, and again they're upgradable as we go along, and I'll touch on that later. But essentially what you'll be doing is popping initially just 1 cube into the brewer, and then you'll be making a couple of cans of soda that will pop out in packs of 4, 6, 8, whatever it is that you're doing. And it will get put on the little dispatch section. So that's the brewing section done. And then what you'll be then doing is picking up the soda packs and then popping them onto your dispatch pallet truck, which then regularly and repeatedly, every 60 seconds, there will be a lorry that will come along and pick up what your packing is able to deal with and what the van is able to deal with, and then take it away and sell it. Now, that is essentially the game, and it doesn't change throughout all of the 12 hours that I've played of this game so far, but oh my god, there is so much to dive into here with how you deal with it. So firstly, after you get past 1 cube making a flavour of soda, because it's very direct, so you'll plant an apple, you'll get apple soda, banana soda, but very quickly you'll be introduced to the idea of recipes. And recipes are where you can then actively mix and match 2 cubes or more to be able to create new flavours. Now these flavours have a resonance between them, and you can see it in the brewing machine because it will be like a red, an amber or a green if it's a good match. And a good match means that you can then sell it at a much better price because people identify and like that flavour more. So what you'll be starting to do is do apple and ginger, for example, or there's a spicy lemon one that's quite early in the game. So you use chili and lemon together to make a spicy lemon drink, which then sells for $7 rather than $3. But again, you'll need to be making sure that you grow and find those essences to make that happen. And there's like a little machine that you can plug in a specific flavor cube into, and then it will tell you either through a mini game that you complete or by paying extra money and just letting it automate in the background. It will start to tell you what types of good recipes this specific flavor cube can mix and match to. And there are hundreds. There's over 100 different types of essences that can convert into flavor cubes, and they get really weird and wonderful. Like there was dirt and grass, spider. There's even unicorn urine. Num 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 num. So you'll be busy trying to find all of these different recipes because those are the ones that are going to make you the most money. But you can mix and match and try out your own combinations too and discover stuff without using that recipe machine. And that's how I initially started off before I started just defaulting to the recipe machine and finding much more efficient ways of making money. So as this all goes along, you'll be able to, when you've put your flavor cubes in, choose the color of the packaging and the color of the soda. You can also choose the type of receptacle. So you can start off with cans, then it will get to thin cans, then it will start to get to bottles, small bottles, thin bottles, big bottles. And each of those will start to increase the value of the soda because it's a bigger pack as you go along. However, that also then costs more water to run. So you need to balance the fact that you need to be water efficient wherever possible. And the more you start to automate things, the more water becomes more of a critical resource to start managing. So for example, if you don't want to go around to a watering can watering plants all the time, then you can start to put in a sprinkler system which will sprinkle 4 plots in its immediate vicinity every couple of seconds. So that's really simple because it means that it's no longer donkey work that you have to deal with. But the real power comes in here where you start to get bots that can do things for you. So initially you get bots called soda bots that will pick up the soda that has just been produced in the brewer and move it to the pallet truck for delivery. And that's really helpful because they can carry a certain amount and it means that you don't have to just pick stuff and move stuff. So you're getting rid of the donkey work again. These bots, again, cost water to run. So you might start off with having to water them with your watering can, but then over time you start to, through the upgrade tree, unlock a water charging machine so that the bots will then know to go and charge themselves when they're running low. Again, removing that donkey work automation over time. And that's a real key thing with Soda Story. It always introduces something that you'll have to do manually, and then at a later point you'll be able to then start to automate it as you move on to trying out new mechanics over time. And it does take time to get there. I'm still discovering new stuff 12 hours in, but I feel still quite confident that I understand the direction of the story as I get into the latter kind of section of the story mode. As this continues with unlocking bots, so you get the soda bot that does that, you then get the garden bot that can then plant and harvest and store away flavour cubes once it's been planted and harvested. And this was my main kind of area where I spent most of my time, because at the rate of which they pluck out stuff and store things away, you then get store bots, which are basically taking things from storage and putting them into the brewers. So you've got 3 different bots doing 3 different things, but they aren't necessarily always going at exactly the same pace. So storage becomes a huge issue. So I had loads of fridges where I was storing all of my flavour cubes, but because I wasn't being efficient in programming my bots on what they planted, what they harvested, and where they stored stuff, and in what order they were doing it in, I would end up with a fridge full of, say, lemon when I needed to have ketchup and mustard in there. And then the bot, because they can only take from one place and deliver somewhere else, they're kind of waiting to see whether the fridge is going to be filled up with the thing that it can't stick in the fridge. And so it just sits there, and then like the machine stops, and then I was like, oh, my production has fallen over. And this is the crux, the real crux of Soda Story, because if you can get that right, your production line is almost entirely automated so that you can go off and deal with things like market research, upgrading things through your upgrade tree, sending out drones to go and find other things, wandering off with your security and tampering other people's businesses so that you can then steal their money through cryptocurrency mines and things like that. But I didn't get the chance to really dive into that nearly as much as what I could have done if I'd have actually sat there and been properly efficient up front. So I really apologise that a lot of this footage is me being highly inefficient, and people who are very good at automation production lines will be sitting there going, this gamer is terrible. Fully admit, I wasn't great at it. But that was part of the fun, because as you go through the game, because it's always challenge based in a story mode, because you're looking at who is the next challenger that you need to knock out of the game, essentially. Because whenever you, where you're all competing on this reality TV show, you're always competing to leapfrog whoever's next above you on the leader table. And when you do, they move out of their warehouse and you take over theirs and keep your old one. So making sure logistically that you're scaling properly, but also then dig up some of your garden plots and then move them over, some of the ones that you're not using right now. What flavours should you mix and match in the same gardens? Because all of your bots can only stay in the factories that they're in. And these factories get bigger and bigger and bigger. And so you're going to have more of a machine of stuff going along. So you have to kind of constantly upscale and uproot and move along as you go as well. So there's an awful lot of planning that you need to do. So if you're able to keep the production line as autonomous as possible, that allows you to focus on all of this kind of grandiose scaling that's going on. As I said, this is like a highly story-driven game, so it's constantly dropping challenges in front of you, which then set you up for the ability to be able to knock the person that's next up on the leaderboard off their perch so that you can take over their warehouse. And so quite a lot of this involves around creating certain types of soda, and this is where market research comes in. So you have 4 different demographics: kids, young adults, elderly, and they'll all have rotating around flavours that they're interested in, and additional kind of factors, like you can add in additional ginseng and things like that, or caffeine, so that you can make like an energy drink version of whatever it is that you've produced. Now, the more of these types of flavours that you hit when they're trending, it's all good, because that means more money in your pocket. And so if you're really playing up against being efficient in Soda Story Brewing Tycoon, and you need to in the final couple of battles that you have, it's all around making sure that you've then looked at the market research, seen what flavours are trending in price or what's trending in certain demographics, and paying out for some marketing in that demographic to say, hey, look at us, we've just got this new drink out. But also making sure that you switch out your recipes from all of your brewers, which then means that you then have to sort out the automation for your bots to make sure that they're then they're harvesting the right flavour cubes, putting them in the right fridges or storage cabinets, which then mean the bots then pull it out and back and forth. Can you see how engrossing and in-depth that then becomes? And that's where so much of the time in Soda Story Brewing Tycoon can be won and lost, because you're sitting there perfecting things and tweaking stuff, but because there's a live market of up and down values of flavours and market research, you do have to change things up. Not constantly, because it changes on I'd say every 15-20 minute basis, but it's still going to take a minute or two to just kind of realign stuff if you're really wanting to optimize things. In this game, storage is huge, as I've already said. I found that I started to have an abundance of cubes that I wasn't using anymore and was struggling to know where to put them. Some of that I would then end up drinking myself. And the idea behind this is that loads of your sodas have different effects, and you can test them out on yourself. These give you special abilities that then enable you to do specific things. So there's one that lets you walk on a cloud, which means that you can walk across water, handy to get to islands where some of the hidden, lesser known flavour essences are hidden. Some of them will make you spew up a treasure map, for example, and if you get 10 pieces together, it will show you a hidden essence buried somewhere in the outer skirts of the level where you're wandering around between everyone's factories. Some of the other stuff will make your feet catch fire, which means that you can melt ice cubes. Again, if there's essences frozen in the freezer of someone else's place, you can go and rob them. Some of them will make you invisible to lasers, for example, too. So there's loads and loads of different effects that you can use. Have fun, muck about with them. The ice cream one made me laugh because it just freezes you every couple of seconds and you go, ooh. So, yeah, good fun and interesting to go and play with. Again, talking about that, going around and nicking other people's stuff, investing in your security is key. You can get pressure pads, cameras that will move around, laser beams, all of that kind of stuff will unlock as you go through the game. Setting it up in your own place is key, but then also understanding how it works in other people's factories is also key so that you can avoid getting caught and beaten up. Because when you get found by your competitors, that increases their aggression towards going and raiding you back. So if you largely leave them alone, they largely leave you alone. So you can almost play in a nice way and have a much more of a calmer experience. It's also worth noting that all of your bots and your brewers can be upgraded too. So you can program them with different things like increasing their speed, increasing their production yield, making sure that they self-repair themselves or that they can be more efficient on water. And that as you also go through the game, your entire industry can be upgraded. So that could be for unlocking new blueprints, for new storage facilities, new security, new types of bots, but also things like increasing the production carriness that a bot can have, but also like how big the pallet area is for delivery, how regularly the delivery vans appear, how many delivery vans appear. Also, how much or how long it takes to disable some of your tech stuff that you've been busy sabotaging your opponents with. All key, all things that you can upgrade, and that drip feeds over time too. I really like Soda Story Brewing Tycoon. It's engrossing. It's quite donkey work heavy, so I think that might put off some people. There's only two things that I found that I ran into issue-wise with this game, and they both revolve around the same problem. And it's the user interface when you've got things too close together. And it's around when you're programming your bots, which you have to do quite regularly. So say I would have like a brewer in a window or a fridge next to a window, and I was trying to toggle to get the garden plot that's behind it. When you're having to drag your mouse to the edges of the screen to move the camera around to then select whether you want someone to harvest or plant or store or take or deposit something, it gets confused and it can't always click on the right one at the right time. And sometimes I found that I had to start moving objects around so that it would become less clunky and less clear, so that I could then click on the things that I wanted to then get that automation sorted. I did also run into some bugs with the actual bots themselves, just deciding that they couldn't be watered. This largely solved itself when I then unlocked the ability for them to be able to water themselves. But quite often I would go up and water a bot and it would just stay there saying that it's 100% watered, but then it just wouldn't move or do anything. So I found that quite frustrating, although again, it did largely solve itself over time. But yeah, that UI bug of being able to move things back and forth and select things that were close to each other was reoccurring throughout my entire experience. And the more bigger and chunkier your factories become, the more of a problem that became. So if that could be sorted either by some kind of fade or toggle back and forth between things, I think that would be really cool. But yeah, this game is tons of fun. Make sure you're good at inventory management. Make sure you're good at making a production line efficient. And I think you'll have a great time with Soda Story Brewing Tycoon. Any comments or questions, leave them down below. Written review will be over on highplanegames.com. Sorry for the absolutely massively long review, but there was tons I wanted to get through. Higher Plane Games is part of the Higher Plane Network, a completely independent media outlet supported by people like you. The goal is to create the best possible content that cultivates a richer indie scene for games as well as music and entertainment. To find out more and to get involved, visit patreon.com/HigherPlane Network. Your support makes all the difference, and in return you'll gain access to bonus content and downloads. Thank you for watching.